Hello, welcome to June Motherhood, and this class is on advocacy for families of color. I am Shantae, and I am joined here by my husband, Jamichael. I'm a certified childbirth educator, as well as a doula, evidence-based birth instructor, and a spinning babies parent educator. I started my birth work in 2013. Shortly after the birth of my first child, and ever since then, I've just kind of been growing upon my skills and the support that I offer for families. I love lettering and traveling around the country, and we are based out of Lexington, Kentucky. Is there anything you would like to share?
No. Hi.
Okay. So a little bit about June. There are classes for every stage of your pregnancy. They offer expert support and one-on-one support, as well as virtual parent groups. So regardless of where you are at in your pregnancy journey, they have a class for you somewhere along that line. So for today's agenda, we will be discussing knowing your rights, advocating for the best decisions for you and your family. What does consent really mean? And then we will be answering some questions at the end, and Jamichael will be giving some partner advice as I go through this presentation as well, so that the partners can get some questions answered there too. So to begin, when are you due? If you are due soon, like within the next few weeks to a month or two, you are really going to want to start asking some of these advocacy questions to your provider. If you have a little bit of time, you can slowly start asking questions at each prenatal visit. But again, if you're due sooner, you want to start asking some of these questions up front. A question that I have is, what's an emotion you feel when you think about birth? You can answer first and then I'll answer.
Anxiety.
Yeah, a lot of people have anxiety, especially for first-time parents. The emotions that I hear is anxiety or nervous or uncertain because they don't know what to expect. But for me, an emotion that I feel is joy and happiness, because then I get to welcome and meet this new being that we've created. So that's my emotion.
Anxiety.
Okay. Okay, so what does advocacy mean to you?
For me, on the partner side, it is being able to speak up on behalf of my partner during the birth process. Even when we go in to talk to the provider, having some questions, making sure that that concern, those questions, that voice is being heard.
Okay. So the definition of advocacy is the act or process of supporting a cause or proposal, basically supporting your birth desires. So, right on. Yep. Okay. So knowing your rights, you want to begin by asking either your hospital. Sorry, I'm on call too. I'm a doula, so I'm on call. Asking your hospital or your provider about policies during your prenatal visit. So just like I said before, you want to ask these questions up front, and you don't want to basically get caught in you're having your baby and now you want to ask all these questions because you might not get the outcome that you desire. So ask about hospital policies and your provider's policies. Like a simple one is 411 or 511. When do you want me to call you when I'm having my baby? Schedule a tour of your hospital if you can. I know with COVID, things are a little tricky right now. So if you can visit your hospital, do so. If they are not permitting additional visitors in right now, ask them if they have a virtual tour option. If they don't have that, just call and ask, when I have my baby, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to bring with me? And just find out those things beforehand. And of course, you want to understand the procedures for admittance beforehand. So I always recommend, if you can pre-register, do so. And that's one less thing that you have to do once you're getting into the hospital. A lot of hospitals will tell you, if you sign your forms beforehand, just don't date them, because they want them dated for the day that you enter the hospital to have your baby. Any thoughts or questions on this?
No.
Okay, so these are some of the topics that you'd want to evaluate or discuss with your provider beforehand. Eating and drinking. Some hospitals will tell you that you are only permitted to have clear liquids or ice chips, but the evidence now says different, that eating and drinking during labor is perfectly fine. I like to say that giving birth is like a marathon. You don't know how long you're going to be in labor. You can have a 3-hour labor, or you could be in labor for 30 hours. So you want to make sure that you're staying fueled and hydrated in that meantime. Anything you want to say about that for partners?
Yeah, certainly for partners, it's the same thing. I think the focus a lot of times is on the birthing mother and during that process. And a lot of times a partner doesn't think about themselves in that time frame. And so it's important for you to have something there for you to snack on to keep you hydrated as well, going through that process. So you might want to make sure that you're thinking about yourself just as much as you're thinking about the birthing mom.
So what I like to say is, whatever you see marathon runners eating and drinking while they're in a race, those are some of the same things that you want to have in your bag. Whether if it's like your drinks with electrolytes or your coconut water, things high in protein, easy fruits and vegetables that you can snack on. If your nurses or providers say, no, that is not allowed, you cannot eat or drink, just always blame it on the partner's snack and eat while they're not in the room.
Yep.
Hydro,
grapes.
Oh, yeah. So hydrotherapy, basically using water as a comfort measure during birth. If that's getting in the tub, getting in the shower, ask if your hospital has that available. If they do, ask if they are letting birthing persons use those resources. For instance, here in my area, one of the hospitals, they're not using birth tubs right now. So you want to find that out in advance, especially if you plan on using hydrotherapy for your labor. Anything on that?
No.
Okay. Okay. Movement in and out of room and visitors. So with the coronavirus, we know that this has thrown everything for a loop. You want to find out beforehand, what is your hospital's policy on visitors? Is it one support person only, or is it one support person and a doula permitted? If it's one support person only, can that support person switch in and out? More than likely, it's probably going to be no, but you can still ask. If you are permitted to move in and out of the room into the hallways so that you can walk and move about, and if the support person is able to leave and come back. Now, with that, you also want to ask what's their COVID policy for you being admitted into the hospital. Are you going to have a coronavirus test? Are they just going to check your temperature? Are they just going to ask for symptoms? So you want to know all these things up front, because if your partner tests positive for COVID, they're more than likely not going to let them in. So you also want to have a backup person in mind that can support you during your birth.
Very key points. If you can, as you are going through your labor, and depending on where you're at, it might be good if you have the option to get tested ahead of time, so that you can at least show the hospital as you're going in, hey, I have already been tested for COVID-19. Here are the results. For the support person, same thing for you. You want to make sure that if you can, go ahead and get tested ahead of time. But you want to make sure that you understand, again, the hospital policy is about you're moving in and out. There may be some times where you may say, oh, I forgot something out in the car, right? And you want to go out to get it, but now the hospital is saying, well, you can't come back. So you make sure that you talk to them And as you're approaching that time of going into the hospital, try to make sure that you have thought out and well planned what you need to do with going in, to make sure that you grab all of those essentials, depending on what their policy is.
And another note on that is, as a doula, I've actually been calling my hospitals at least once a week to find out what their policies are. So as you're approaching your due date, I would just start calling labor and delivery or your main hospital admission and ask them what's the policy for your maternity floor, because policies are always changing. Literally, some of them are changing day by day. So I would ask about that. For continuous and intermittent monitoring, you want to find out if they're going to basically keep you on the monitors the whole time, or if you can be monitored for 20 minutes for every hour, hour and a half, 2 hours or so. If you're going to be induced, you want to ask about your induction options beforehand and make sure that you have a clear understanding of what that induction process is going to be like. For a cesarean birth or a family-centered birth, I recommend asking if you're going to have a natural birth. I still say have a cesarean plan in the back of your mind, just because you never know what to expect. Emergencies can happen out of the blue, and so you always want to be prepared. But if you are going in knowing that you are going to have a cesarean, ask for a gentle cesarean. And so that's basically making sure that you have a clear drape. Some hospitals say that you have to provide your own and that they don't provide that. So you might want to look that up beforehand. If your partner is able to help with the birth, if you can have your arms free to move and not strapped down, for skin to skin to happen immediately after the birth, and for the partner to clamp the cord if that is what you desire.
And a few things on that is what Shante is talking about having your cesarean plan, even if you're planning right now to have a natural vaginal birth. At that particular point, the communication between you and your partner is very essential. So you sit down together and talk through what your plans are, what you would like to have happen, so that if something does arise, your partner knows, hey, this is what we've already talked about. So we want to make sure that we go down that road. And I think that's where Shante is going to talk about advocating.
Yes. So advocating for yourself. Here you see we have two acronyms, BRAIN and BRAND. A lot of the parts of the acronym are the same. It's when you get to the bottom that they're a little bit different. So B is for benefits, R is for risk, A is for alternatives. I'll discuss I in a minute. N is for no, not now, or nothing. And then you have D for discuss. So when your provider comes in and presents you with the situation, these are the things that you want to ask them. Okay, what are the benefits of this? What are the risks involved with this? Is there an alternative that we can try before moving on to whatever this is? N is for no, not now, or we want to do nothing. So basically, no, we don't want to do that, or we would like to wait and see what happens before we change into something different. I is for intuition. Basically, what is your gut telling you? Do you feel like that's a good decision? Or do you want to wait? Do you want to try something else? So that's I. D is for discuss. So whatever's presented to you, you want to make sure that you have time to discuss that with your partner. If you are birthing alone, you want to have time to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what's being presented to you and that you make the best decision for yourself. Anything on that?
I think there's always the opportunity for the partners to have some form of advocating for their partner during it. So one of the things for the partners is to understand that you do have that area where the birthing mother's intuition may kick in. And so you want to ask, sometimes they may be fearful of speaking up because they feel like their voice may not be heard, or these are the medical professionals, they know what they're talking about. But in the back of her mind, she may say, this just doesn't seem right. As a partner, that's an opportunity for you to step up and say, okay, what's wrong? I can see something. I can see you're thinking about this or whatever it is. You might be a little hesitant. Um, as a partner, you want to make sure that you can pull those concerns out. Ask a lot of questions. If there's ever any concern and your intuition is starting to kick in and go against the advice that your medical professionals are bringing to you, then as Shantae said, you get that intuition that kicks in. Discuss it with your partner. Um, Discuss it with the birthing mom to say, hey, how are you really feeling about this?
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, just to make sure that you are being taken care of.
I mean, I can even speak from a personal experience with that with one of our many children. And even with me being a doula and being in the field of childbirth, when you're in the throes of having a baby, sometimes a lot of this like leaves your mind. And I remember being presented with something, and I remember you looking at me and being like, do you want to do that? And I was like, I don't know. And so you really had to like bring me back for us to like discuss what it was. And then for me to be like, oh, no, I don't want that.
Right.
So that goes back to having that plan too beforehand of kind of knowing what you want. Because again, in the throes of labor, you're just trying to have a baby. You're not trying to like think of other things and answer questions.
No.
So have a plan. So how can you find a way to discuss your options privately?
There's always the simple, sometimes uncomfortable, but you just ask, the nurses, doctors, whoever, if you can have a minute to discuss it.
Yeah. That, or my favorite is go to the bathroom. If you don't have an epidural, go to the bathroom. And even labor, like seriously, just go to the bathroom and labor in the bathroom.
Not that you have to use the restroom.
You don't have to use the restroom, but the bathroom is a good place to labor at anyway. Whole nother discussion. But just labor in the bathroom and take a few contractions or waves, so I like to call them, and discuss those options. Sometimes it's even best if you have a doula. I know with coronavirus right now, some hospitals, doulas are not permitted, but then with things changing a little bit, doulas are being permitted back in some hospitals. So this is from Evidence-Based Birth, and these are some of the benefits of having a doula. There's a 39% decrease in the risk of a cesarean. There's a 31% decrease in the risk of a dissatisfied birth experience. There's a 15% increase in the likelihood of a spontaneous vaginal birth. And there's a 10% decrease in the use of any pain medications. So even if you hire a doula beforehand, you have this established relationship and they have an understanding of what you desire for the outcome of your birth to be. So even just having somebody on the outside that you can call and be like, hey, this is what my provider has presented me with. I would love to have the opportunity to just get a really good understanding of what's going to take place and for you to kind of help walk me through what this is going to look like or the pros and cons of this. It's just always great to have a doula, just somebody that you can talk to who's not emotionally connected to you, but someone who understands the process of birth, and they can help you to advocate for yourself and for you to speak up for yourself. And most of the times, if you hire a local doula, they already know the hospital, they already know the providers, they kind of know the ins and outs of how each provider works. So having a doula is essential. So now we're going to go into informed consent and refusal. And so the question is, what does consent mean to you? You want to slide back over?
Oh, you're asking me?
I am. What does consent mean to you?
Consent is the green light. It's the acceptance of whatever it is that you're presenting, and I say, yes, I'm on board with that.
Not on video.
So, sorry.
There you go. Okay. So consent is the permission for something to happen or agreement to do something. So with consent, as a consumer, you have the right to have all of the information presented to you before making a decision. So basically, your provider should not come in and say, you're gonna have a cesarean now, just out of the blue. Like, that's the thing that's on my mind. You should be presented with the information of why you're having a cesarean. Like, is something going on with me, with baby? You need to have they should give you all of the information up front before you make that decision. And that goes back to that brand or brain. Well, what's the benefits? What's the risk? What's the alternative? What if we do nothing now? Give us time to discuss. Sometimes it's just as simple as your body needs time to birth and labor, and things can turn around. So what does refusal mean to you?
Pump the brakes, hold up the stop sign.
Okay.
No, don't go there.
Don't go there. Okay. Refuse is indicate or show that one is not willing to do something or not grant that request. So refusal is a personal right. You have the right to say no. You have the right to say no. And even though you've signed your consent forms, it does not mean that that's the final answer. You could have signed every single consent form. And if you change your mind, no is still an answer, and you can still refuse.
And don't, as far as the partner being with you, whether that's doula, whether that's husband or whoever, again, they have to understand what it is that is being presented, the information that's there, and ultimately the decision that the two of you have made, and the two of you that have come together for this birth plan to say, yes, this is okay, no, this is not. And as Shante says, even once you get into the middle of it, and what was once a yes is now a no, then that person can stand up and advocate and say, okay, no, this has changed. This is where we want to go with it now. So having that support person there, again, can really help out in those different times. Because as Shante said previously, you're in the middle of it. You're just thinking, hey, I need to have this child. Need to do whatever's necessary. And you may be thinking, again, these are the medical professionals, so I've got to take their word for it. But again, that's where you have to listen to your body as the birthing mother, have that intuition, and then the partner to be there to support that answer, whatever it is that you give.
Yeah. So again, refusal is a personal right, and a signed consent form does not mean a final answer. Perfect. So partner Q&A. What tips do you have for a first-time partner, dad, going into a hospital?
You have to remember to think about yourself just as much as you're thinking about mom and the baby. It's one of those things that Shante said, it can turn out to be a marathon. And so if you don't take care of your own personal health while you're there, then you're not going to be of much good to the birthing mother. She's counting on you to help support and be a voice, during some unsure times. And if you're over on the couch passed out from dehydration or something, that's not going to be good. So you have to make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you plan for that long haul. Just being comfortable in the environment is one thing to think about. If you're a cold-natured person like myself, you go into the hospital, you can't spend your time trying to be wrapped up in heated blankets. You want to make sure you take a jacket or fleece or something like that so your body temperature is comfortable. We've already talked about snacks and taking, plenty of fluids, Powerade, Gatorade, anything like that. But making sure you just take care of your own personal health as you go into it.
Yeah. So during COVID, what are your tips for someone like it is just the birthing person and their partner? Do you have any final tips on advocating for themselves, like around COVID?
A big part is really have, what I'm going to say is have a third party that's available. So
That's a
if
doable.
you have your doula, or if you're not seeking the services of a doula, but still have a third party
Yeah.
that you may feel comfortable enough with to call in the event that something may change, in the event that something happens, and maybe you've forgotten the things that you've listened to and the classes that you have attended. Having someone with a listening ear, um, preferably a doula, that can have a calm head, to actually help with coaching you through some of those changes that may come your way. Um, Again, with the COVID scenario, you don't know what to expect going into the hospitals. Their policies, as Shantae mentioned, are changing daily. So at this point, really try to be as prepared as possible going into it. But again, having that third party that you can call if necessary to say, hey, this is what's going on. We just need some additional advice. We need some additional guidance on this. What are your thoughts? That's really the additional piece of advice I would give right now.
Perfect. Anything else you want to share?
For the partner, especially for dads, enjoy it. It's going to seem hectic. It's going to seem rushed. Even if it's 3 days long, it's going to seem rushed. Um, you're going to be anxious, and anxiety is going to kick in. Your emotions are going to run high. The adrenaline is going to come. You're going to crash. I mean, you're going to go through just a whole range of emotions and then physical um, results as an impact to that. But really enjoy it. Um, if you have the opportunity to help your child transition into this world, I know the doulas and others use the term catching.
Catch the baby.
But every time they say that, I think of baseball and the catcher being behind home plate, just waiting for the baby to come. So I say transition, helping the baby transition into this life. Um, I've had that opportunity. It is a great opportunity, a great feeling to know that the first person that this child interacts with as they enter into this world is you. The dad, the parent. It is a great thing. So if you have not thought about that, consider that greatly and do it. Don't hesitate. Do it. You're not going to drop baby.
No, and there's always going to be somebody
There'll be plenty of
beside
people
you.
around you to make sure that doesn't happen. But to do that and really, again, just to enjoy this entire journey that you all are on.
Perfect. My last one piece of advice would be if at any point you feel like your provider is not listening to you, you can always switch providers at any point during your pregnancy. If it comes to you literally being in labor, a great class that I would recommend is Birth Monopolies, 3 things every parent should know. And literally you could be in the middle of labor and if your nurse is not agreeing with you, if the doctor or midwife or whoever is there with you is not on the same page as you, and you're just getting like a lot of red flags and a lot of like negative feedback, and it's just like not working in your birthing space, you can always fire them and ask for somebody else. If your nurse is not vibing with you, you can always go to the nurse's station. You don't even have to give an explanation. Just say, we would prefer to have another nurse. So just always know that you are the consumer and that you are paying them to provide a service for you. So you can always switch providers. It's never too late to switch providers. So thank you again for joining us. We had a great time sharing information with you. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out via the contact on junemotherhood.com. Thanks so much.